Hi everyone, welcome back to BSpline. Today I want with you to follow the respiration cycle of a lux. How to do that? We need to do a non-rigid registration between the landmarks of the lux from the initial respiration cycle timestamp to the final one, okay, or to another one. For that, we're going to use SimpleITK with the ITv4 framework for the non-rigid registration, which is using the BSpline. BSpline method is like the basic curves method. So let's first of all go back a step just to understand what is a registration, what is a non-registration, what is the difference also between the point cloud and the CT image, where it's difference. Okay, so let's clarify it and then going ahead with the code. So first of all, if you remember, I have this video. You can also see that in YouTube to do the rigid registration. What does it mean? We want to align two point clouds. We have the first point cloud here, we have the second one here. What is the difference between them? It's only the rotation and the translation, meaning we have a 4x4 matrix with a rotation part and a translation part. We want to estimate this transformation to go from the original one in yellow to the final one in blue. So to do that, we can just remove the sound and try following that. So you can see that we need first to hear to get the features, okay, of the point cloud, and then using the ICP algorithm, and just go ahead with the video. Using the ICP iterative closest point algorithm, we can get in fact here the result, the 4x4 matrix. Okay, as you can see here, what is interesting is that we have 0, 0, 0, and 1 here, which is a classic one. Here is the translation part, and here the rotation part. Be aware that here we see the Ronsack result with the parts in this step. I just encourage you to see this video. So that is the first approach, okay, to get transformation matrix to align two point cloud. Then we have a more advanced thing, which is the non-rigid registration for the point cloud. For that, we discussed about one method in the previous video about coherent point drift algorithm, which is a probabilistic approach. What is this approach, but also in general, what is the goal of this task? Is in fact we have a source fish and we want to get the target fish. The source fish in blue, we have several points. Just imagine that in 3D, it doesn't matter, currently it's in 2D, but the same idea. So in order to go to the target one, to the red one, we need not to apply a simple rotation plus translation matrix, but we need to be able to modify the position of each single point independently to the other one. It's not completely independent because we need to still have links between them in order to influence certain region, but it's not like a global registration. It's not like a rigid registration. It's a deformation field. So the question is how to be able to compute this displacement field. So this displacement field, in fact, is composed by a Gaussian kernel and a weight. Okay, and the weight matrix, meaning that we'll be able to apply to each single point, for example, this one, a certain coordinate here, which is based on the Gaussian kernel, which is influenced by Gaussian, meaning the point around, and also the weight, which is in fact different weight depends on the position of the point. So if we are closer to this point, we will have more weight, and if we are far from this point, then the weight will be decreasing. So then we can get from this point this other point after applying the displacement field. Okay, now it's clear. So now let's come back on that. What is the difference and why I wanted also to describe this part? Because when we work with a CT, don't forget that a CT is in fact a cube of voxels, and that's why we can see in fact here the difference, okay, the difference slice, okay, inside this same cube. When we perform a rotation or when we perform a displacement field, it means that we are not going to see the cube after that rotated like a rotated cube, or to see it like a lux rotated. It's not exactly like that. We are going in fact to recompute the intensity of gray for each pixel, and this is called the transformation applied. So the same thing here. What we want to do in fact is to be able to compute the intensity of gray for each voxels based on the non-rigid registration. So for that we are going to use the method of Bezier curves, the method of BSpline. How it's working, what is exactly? In fact, we have the cube, which is the volume, okay? And we can see also in this module, I recall that this is the original repo of SimpleITK package. It's a very great package for medical imaging. And we can see here also a very clear explanation about the registration. So let me just scroll up. I think it's here. Yeah, in this part. Okay, so we can see here we have this fixed image and we have the virtual image domain to the final moving image domain. What I want you to understand is that we place a grid to our voxel cube, meaning that here, when we want to compute the displacement field, we just need to imagine that we need to fix a grid, okay, and we need to also declare the resolution of this grid. It can be 50 by 50 by 50 or whatever, and this grid will be in fact our based to the displacement. So then the displacement field is in fact a continuous function that we are going to apply to this grid like a Bezier curves. Okay, so let's now, after this theory, I hope that is now more clear for you. Let's go ahead with the code. So the first thing we need to do is to run this cell in order to load the images. I just did that, and here we have the slice. Okay, it's in fact 4D. Why is 4D? Because we have 3D volume and we have two times. We have the time, it's time 0 and the time 1. Okay, be aware, if you focus, okay, you can see a small difference. Why it's a small difference? Okay, why it's different? Because it's in the respiration cycle. So our goal is to be able to estimate the step 1, okay, without the landmark, only from the step 0, okay, using the non-rigid registration. Okay, so let's see now the code. So we just need to say, okay, the fixed image is in fact the image of the time 0, and the moving image is the image of the time 1. I just run that and go ahead. The registration method used, I need first to grid physical spacing. So this is grid. We need to determine the number of BSpline control points using the physical spacing we want to the thinnest resolution control grid. So again, we need to place a grid with a certain resolution. This grid will meaning in fact the resolution points, the control points, in order to compute the displacement field. Okay, then the starting mesh size will be 1/4 of the original. It will be refined by the multi-resolution framework, and then we just play to the initial transform. So in general, the initial transform can be just the alignment of the centroid between the CT at the time 2, the time 1 minus the CT at the time 2. This can be an initial transformation. We can see that instead of the standard set initial transform, we use the BSpline specific method, which also accepts the scale factor parameter to refine the BSpline mesh. In this case, we start with the given mesh size at the highest pyramid level, then we double it in the next low level. And in the full resolution image, we use a mesh that is 4 times the original size. Okay? It needs some. After 34 seconds, we get the optimizer stopping condition already minimized. That is great. Now we need to use the qualitative evaluation via segmentation transfer. Why it's important to use segmentation to verify to check in fact the quality of the registration, because in fact when we compute the registration based on the landmarks of the segmentation, it's allow us to not taking into account all the parts that can disturb our model of displacement field estimator. So we need to focus on the landmarks and to compute this displacement field based on that. Then we can just see the landmarks obtained after the transformed segmentation. So we can run that. And now we can see that this is the time 1, this is a fixed image, and you see that the landmarks now is not adapted to this fixed image because it's already transformed to be adapted fully to the moving image. Okay, and now it's better in this place, and we can also play with that and see that it's completely aligned with this part. If we do that to the first one, you see that it's not great here because it's the first image, but now we are working with the transform segmentation, and that's why the transform segmentation is providing better result on the transformed image in this one, in fact. So this was in fact the more advanced registration with CT imaging. I hope it was clear for you. Understand that this field is not so trivial. Again, this is a very important thing to understand, that a displacement field is completely different when we work with point cloud, when we work with a grid. In fact, with volume. With a point cloud, it's like we can continue working with samples, and we just need to estimate the kernel and the weight for the non-rigid displacement. But in cube, in the volume, we need in fact to place a grid and to estimate the continuous function of displacement field for each point of the grid, which are controlled by the control points depends on the resolution of your grid. That's it for today. Thank you for following me. Please share this video on LinkedIn, on the networks, and let's go ahead for next video next week.